All right, this is a new section of the history of psychology. We left off talking about Wundt and his contribution. We also talked about Marshall Hall. One person I didn't talk about was Helmholtz. He was early 1800s, and he was the first person to measure a neural impulse. In other words, how long does it take a message to go from your foot to your brain, or from your hand to your brain? He was able to measure that. Okay, now we do it automatically to measure that. Okay, in other words, we think about now we know we have your fast acting impulse and your slow impulse. You ever have a sharp pain, like you step on a nail? Okay, we're talking about going 100, maybe 180 miles an hour. On the other hand, a dull, throbbing pain like a toothache, that would be your slow neural impulses. Okay, but back to Wundt and his structuralism. Okay, we had a group of psychologists who left Leipzig and came to the United States. So the question is, who were the functionalists? Well, the functionalists were students of Wundt who came to the United States to start their own laboratory. But the thing that's unique about the functionalists is that they didn't have a formal founder. I mean, you, like for instance, certain areas you can put your name. This Comte was a founder of positivism. Locke was a founder of empiricism. Wundt was a founder of structuralism. But on the other hand, functionalists, you can't really put your finger on one person and say this individual was a founder of the functionalist movement. However, there are three, I can just say, historical events, okay, that created what we now call, or contributed to what we now call the functionalist movement. Wundt, let me just say Wundt there because most of your functionalists were the students of Wundt, were influenced by Wundt. Then Darwin, the publication of Darwin's Origin of Species, and then Western expansion. Okay, Western expansion is the movement of a group of people from the Atlantic coast across the continent to California. Okay, and I always think when I take Western, I always think about covered wagons. And as they're going through, they wiped out a group of people, enslaved another group of people, and to a certain extent, polluted the atmosphere. Okay, but Western expansion. Okay, Western expansion kind of ties in there. But let's go back and spend some time about Darwin. Charles Darwin. I would say Darwin's publication, The Origin of Species, was one of the most misquoted and misinterpreted pieces of literature, second to the Bible, what Darwin said versus what people said that Darwin said. First of all, Darwin never said man evolved from apes. It's a Bishop Wilberforce who was going around England trying to discredit Darwin and discourage people from reading Darwin's book. And one part of his speech was, if you read this book, you'll believe man evolved from apes. It's like a nickname that stuck. Okay, but what Darwin did was he wrote down and took notes of everything he saw. Okay, Darwin started out going to school to become a minister. Okay, but then he decided, well, I'm going to study anymore. I'm going to take some time off. So he got a job on a ship. And the ship was the Beagle, called the Beagle, and it was basically owned by a map-making company. In other words, where they're going all around the different parts of the world land masses to make a map of the world. What made Darwin famous was he took notes. He would draw things and describe the things he saw. Okay, and take certain butterflies and species and save them. And basically from this, he came out with the whole idea that all living things, they either adapt or they perish. And also the deer that can't run is going to sickly is going to first one to get eaten. Next they're stronger. The lion that basically can't keep up is going to starve, and the next generation of lions. So kind of natural selection. But the greatest contribution of Darwin was one, the implication that humans are animals. Okay, which opened up the door for all kinds of research on animals, with medical procedures and so forth. We also talking about comparative psychology. Okay, and also he documented all the different types of life forms he observed, he noticed at that time. Okay, but all living things adapt to their environment. I mean, every place he went, there were turtles. And turtles had claws, turtles had flippers, big turtles, little turtles, turtles had soft shells, hard shells. Okay, every place you went, there were trees for the most part. Sometimes vegetation. You have oak trees on the East Coast, evergreens is part of the country. You have certain shrubs and then the tundra in Alaska, you have palm trees in the South. All living things, they adapt to the environment, okay, to a certain extent. Okay, but the idea of also categorizing all living things, plants, animals. Remember in school, talking about genus, species, phylums, those sort. That's basically his contribution. Okay, so in other words, he was the one that catapulted biology into a science. Okay, but think about that. Humans are animals. Okay, that was the main thing that came up with this. Now, the idea of Darwin, it caused a scientific revolution all over the Western world. Because at the time I said it, it was called the 1800s, considered the age of reasoning. Now Darwin kind of knocked it out to a certain extent. Okay, the age of now you're moving away from the idea, certain ideas, different issues like that. Next individual I'll talk about was Darwin's cousin, Francis Galton. Galton's contribution was he introduced statistics to psychology. In other words, particularly the mean and the correlation coefficients. In other words, Quetelet was an astronomer at that time who noticed that whenever students took a test, they'd always form a curve. You know, some people did really good on it, some people did really bad on it, most people kind of did in the middle. And so basic Galton would use this in his research. He was like the measurer. I mean, he would measure different things, shapes of heads, arms lengths, reaction time. He also invented one of the first mental abilities tests, not the IQ test, but the first mental abilities test. Okay, he's considered the most intelligent man in the world because he's got a perfect score on the test that he designed. You know, however you want to interpret that. But Galton also believed in what we call hereditary genius. So he felt that geniuses ran through families. He did biological research to prove it. He noticed that all the people who made the greatest contributions to his society at that time came from families of affluence. Once again, Galton discovered through his research that everybody who made the greatest contribution to society came from families of affluence. Okay, what he overlooked, okay, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But from his research, he concluded that to make a better society, we should encourage the birth rate of the fit and discourage the birth rate of the unfit. In other words, if geniuses run through families, why not encourage them to have kids, more kids? And if it runs through families, then let's see what we can do about these idiots and people who are not intelligent. Now, looking back, what did he overlook? Opportunities, environment. Okay, opportunities. I mean, how many people in the 1800s went to college or even could afford to send their kids to college? Okay, so naturally, someone who's affluent has the luxury and the free time to make great discoveries and do also do those things. But he overlooked that. But then encourage the birth rate of the fit, discourage the birth rate of the fit. He was also one of the founders of eugenics movement, eugenics, selective breeding of humans. The next individual I'm talking about is Herbert Spencer. Herbert Spencer was actually one who came up with the term social Darwinism and survival of the fittest. Okay, but social Darwinism, the suffering, the poor, and less fortunate is okay for the greater good of society. Okay, to a certain extent. Okay, but think about that. Okay, and he was also part of the eugenics movement. Let's encourage certain people to have kids and discourage other folks not to have kids. And it's okay to wipe people out because they weren't, social Darwinism. Okay, you can just wipe these people out because they weren't fit or couldn't survive anyway. Think about that mentality to a certain extent. Let's talk about Arthur Jensen. Fast forward 1970. Arthur Jensen, he taught at UC Berkeley in 1970. He proposed that everybody who had an IQ below 75 should be sterilized. Once again, that continuation of the genetics. In other words, if your intelligence is most of your intelligence there at birth, then what we can do is, control the population and encourage more people to have kids. And if you have IQ below 75, you shouldn't be allowed to have children. Think about that mentality for a minute. Fast forward 1994, Charles Murray and Edward Harrison wrote a book called The Bell Curve. And he's a very soft-spoken person. His main hypothesis was kind of consistent with Jensen and others. Well, basic intelligence is inherited. And the problem with America is trailer park people have a higher fertility rate than people who basically grew up in gated communities. So we need to do something to control the trailer park population. Okay, once again, we're talking about genetic engineering to a certain extent, or social engineering where he's controlling the population. Okay, and all these people were kind of spin off from Darwin interpretation of Darwin to a certain extent, and also part of that the mentality of the functionalists, that and so forth. 1913, young psychologist right out of college, graduated from University of Chicago, got a job right out of college, Johns Hopkins University, married the president of the university's daughter, was sanctioned to be the keynote speaker of psychology convention in 1913. His opening statement was, introspection has no place in psychology. Now, was the primary method of functionalist introspection, or was the primary method of structuralist introspection? So about a room full of functionalists and structuralists, and he's telling them, your method's worthless. We should only study those things that are objectively observable, and the only thing you objectively observe is behavior. So Watson was considered the founder of the behaviorist movement. Think about that. The idea of we should only study things that are objectively observable. Can you see an id or ego? No, you can't see those things, okay? But you can see what a person does. Or another phrase, actions speak louder than words. What a person does is one thing. What a person says is something different. Okay. Anyway, we'll continue talking the next section.